Today on the show, are we at war with Canada? Almost. Plus, you and I discuss the fact that your tax dollars are being used to argue the fact that almonds don't have nipples and you can't milk them.
Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
Let's go!
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born!
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So I got an email. You can do that too. Hit me up. You got a question, a query, a comment, little friendly dissension? I welcome that. I love that. At ADSXE is where you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, where you can email me ad@iheartradio.com. Yeah, I'm a big fan of some friendly dissent. As long as you're polite when you step to me with your disagreements, this is what makes the world go around. See, there's a lot of talk radio hosts that get on the air and all they want to do is evangelize to a bunch of people that already agree with them. Boring. If there's two people in a conversation, you both think the same thing, well, one of you isn't necessary. I like it. Some of my most sort of like enriching, fruitful friendships have come out of people stepping to me and going, I don't know about what you just said. I don't think that's right. And as long as it's done in a polite manner, man, it doesn't make me want to go, F this person, I'm out. It makes me want to go, I have a feeling I'm about to learn a thing or two about a perspective that I wasn't previously acquainted with. And I feel like every single time that happens, I get into a better and warmer place in life. I feel more connected with the world and the people around me. I feel less lost. I feel less alone. And I feel less scared when I start to understand the perspectives of people that I don't necessarily agree with. And you know what's kind of interesting? There's a guy called Clay who started writing me years ago. I'm trying to remember what the initial point... I think it had to do with Confederate monuments or Confederate graveyards. And if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you might have heard me read the letter that he sent me on the air. And it was a beautifully articulate letter that explained exactly why it was so important to him that the place where his great-great-grandfather was buried not be defaced. He, in a wonderful way, explained to me, a Yankee with no sense of perspective, what it is to have family roots in the South. I mean, I love the South. I've spent a good portion of my life in the South, but I don't have family roots in the South, so I've got no connection to that whole sort of Civil War thing. And he explained to me that he had a relative going back several generations that had a little patch of land, and that was it. He wasn't a rich man. He wasn't a slave owner. He had no interest in the political ideologies of the day. He was just trying to make a crust. He was trying to survive. He was trying to feed his family. But he heard that death itself was on its way. So he mustered and he joined the Confederate Army and went through many battles, eventually died and was buried in a Confederate graveyard. And this was just a guy. This was just a guy with no connection to any of the rich man's politics that many say were at the root of the Civil War. He was just a man who was trying to defend what little he'd scraped together in this world for himself, and he happened to be on a certain side of the country. And this guy explained to me why it was so heartbreaking to see his final resting place desecrated and done away with. And you know what? It was a perspective that, because I hadn't lived it, because I'd never known anybody that had lived it, was completely lost on me. And it made me a better, more enriched person to learn about this experience through this letter that Clay sent me. And man, since then, we talk about a lot of different things. Now, in many ways, me and this guy could not be more different. In many ways, we could not be more different. I'm from New York, and I spent most of my life growing up living in London. He's from Kentucky. He has lived his entire life in the South, I believe. And in terms of what we do for a living, in terms of our life experiences, they probably couldn't be more disparate. But what's interesting is we really get along. We share ideas, we share thoughts, we share conversations, we agree on some things, we disagree on others. And the more we talk, the more we started to realize what we do have in common. On paper, we are nothing like each other. We are the exact polar opposites. But the more we talk, the more we realize, we had maybe similar relationships with our fathers. We had some things about our growing up, our upbringing, that make us very much the same. So on paper, these folks that have nothing to do with one another and have seemingly completely different life experiences, we discovered because of this disagreement that we've got a lot in common. And to this day, it's one of the friendships that I feel incredibly lucky to have, and it came from disagreement. So I welcome disagreement if you want to email me. But the email I got was not about disagreement. It was about a trade war with Canada? Yeah, interesting. We'll get into it next.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
Every day you're going and working, running that rat race and that pace and that place will leave a bad taste for anyone, everyone working day after day.
So like I said, if you have anything to ask, any queries, any questions, any disagreements you want to pose me with, hit me up at ADSXE is where you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email me ad@iheartradio.com. I got an email about something very interesting. I got an email about let me just read it to you. Let's see here. AD, I actually printed this one out. This is from a guy called Jeff, who listens on Real Radio 104.1 in Orlando. What up? How are you, Jeff? Thank you so much for writing. He said, AD, I love your show. You seem to have this ability to explain things to us like we're six. Well, yeah. There's a reason for that. It's because my general grasp of a lot of socio-political things that are going on in the world is basically equivalent to that of a 6-year-old. So it's not a big leap for me, but thank you very much. I've heard you mention a trade war with Canada a couple times, and you also said that maybe we'd get into it on the show. Can you please explain what's going on with Canada? I don't fully understand. And if you could explain it to us like we're six, so much the better. All right, then. Yeah, absolutely. Today on the show, I will attempt to take my very rudimentary explanation, my very rudimentary understanding of what is going on between us and Canada, our long-term allies, our long-term friends, our long-term folks that we've had a special relationship, and I will attempt to bring us all a deeper understanding of what's going on with regard to a trade war with our friends in the Great White Frozen North, the land of Celine Dion, Molson, maple syrup, Nickelback, and things of that nature. Right now, though, before we get into that, I wanted to ask you this. When was the first time you realized that you were on a budget, or your family was on a budget? When was the first time you became aware of money? I think one of the first times I became aware of it was when I was a kid and I went over to my aunt's house. And look, generally speaking, it's a fine line that parents walk, because you've got to teach your kids real world facts about how the world works and how the world turns and all of the above. And that will at some point include money. And there is a shocking lack of financial literacy among Americans today. And I have to believe the little piece of Alex Jones conspiracy theorist in my brain believes that's completely on purpose, because we're supposed to study English, math, reading, writing, arithmetic, the 3 R's. But at no point do people teach us, besides sort of like a cursory glance during a home ec class, about money and how it works and how credit works and how the world goes around and how badly you can screw things up with your first credit card and all the above. Like, people don't seem to be grasping this stuff. And maybe parents teach it, maybe parents don't teach it, but it's a tough thing for parents to teach, because on the one hand, if you're a good parent, you want to give your kid a real shot at, making their way in the world. And that includes not having them worry about things. Like when your kid's 6, you don't want to burden them with, the ideas and notions of your credit card debt. You don't want to burden them with the idea of how much the mortgage is. You don't want to burden them with the idea that it's an adjustable rate mortgage and things are going to go up soon. And then what are you going to do? You want the kid to know everything will be all right, and you just concentrate on those 3 R's of reading, writing, arithmetic, and you make your way in this world, and mom and dad are going to look after everything. And that's great. But at some point, you have to also interject with a little bit of real world stuff that's going to, hopefully set the kid up with some financial literacy and an understanding of what makes the world go around. So it's a tough balance. I sympathize with parents that are looking at this, but do you remember one of the first times that you realized that maybe money could be a problem, or that you or your family couldn't afford something that you wanted? I do. It was when I went over to my aunt's house, and my aunt made a dish that I have never had before. My aunt lives in Maine, so seafood is plentiful there. I mean, it's, right there. It's in the ocean. You can go get it yourself rather easy. And I don't know if it means it's cheaper there or what have you, but she made, oh my gosh, it was delicious. It's sort of like this creamy shrimp risotto called shrimp thermidor. And I'd never had anything like it before. And quite frankly, I've never had anything like it ever since. But I went to my Aunt Liz's house up in Maine, and she cooked this thing called shrimp thermidor. I was like, this is freaking fantastic. And I think I was staying with them for like a week or something like that. And I was like, this is indescribably good. Can you make it again? So my aunt probably dutifully made her young nephew shrimp thermidor like 4 times while I stayed there. And then I get back to England where I'm growing up, and I'm talking to my mom. I was like, oh man, your sister, Aunt Liz, she made something while I was gone. And my mom was like, oh, what is it? I was like, well, it was shrimp thermidor. And she was like, oh, that is really good. And then cut to a week or so later, after having eaten it several times, I get a hankering for shrimp thermidor, having absolutely no idea. I should have known. Just the part of the name of the dish that goes thermidor should have alerted me to the fact that it was on the pricier side of life, but I didn't know. And I remember being at the grocery store with my mom and being like, hey, Mom, we're here at the grocery store. Let's pick up some stuff. She was like, all right, what do you want to get? I was like, well, what do we need? What do we need for shrimp thermidor? And she was like, oh, yeah, money. I was like, what? And she's like, it's really expensive to make. I don't know that we're going to be doing that anytime super soon. I was like, oh. And that was one of the first realizations that I had, that, man, the adult world means thinking very carefully about where each penny goes, especially in 2018, where all of us seem to be working 1 million hours at 3 different jobs just to kind of make our way. And because of this, when you find out exactly how your hard-earned tax dollars are being wasted by the government, it freaking blows your mind and dismays you like you wouldn't believe. Case in point, have you heard what the FDA is doing with our hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears? We'll get into it next.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on.
So, I got a request from a guy called Jeff that listens on Real Radio 104.1 in Orlando, Florida, asking me if I could explain the trade war that we are kind of sort of entering into with Canada to him like he was 6. And actually, a couple different people have brought this up. I've mentioned it a few times on the show, and we've never quite gotten into it. So today, and by the way, whenever you ask me to explain something to you like you're 6, generally speaking, my grasp of some of these subjects is about that of a 6-year-old, so it's not that big of a freaking leap. So in just a little bit, you and I will discuss the trade war between the U.S. and Canada like we're 6 years old, or the beginnings of the trade war. I don't know if we're officially in it yet, but anyways, we'll break down exactly what's going on shortly. Right now, though, as I was saying before, there comes a point in everybody's life where you realize that money is a thing, that budgets are a thing, that expenses are a thing. And you start being concerned about how you spend your money. And here and now in the year 2018, where everybody's working 1 million extra hours at 3 different jobs because one job will no longer give you the overtime that they used to give our parents. Do you know that's really eaten into the average lifestyle of the average American? not only have salaries not increased over the last, I don't know how many years, but also companies are very reticent to give overtime. So what do you get? Because people aren't getting that overtime pay that our parents were getting. People are getting second and third jobs. So we're all working. We're working really hard. We all want the same stuff. We all want that roof over our heads. Doesn't matter if you're left, down, up, right, Republican, Democrat, some sort of bizarre, satanic, sex ritualistic, whatever. That wasn't very artfully said, but you get the point. No matter who you are, you want the same stuff. We all do, for the most part. We want a roof over our head. We want a job. We want a job that is meaningful to us, hopefully. And we want that job to provide things like food and car payments. And if we have kids, we want that job to provide for that kid having a shot in education, a shot at making their way in this world. We all want the same stuff. And so we are becoming increasingly hardworking. We're spending more of our lives with our noses to the grindstone because of things like the lack of overtime pay in America and so on and so forth. And, well, we are becoming that much more cognizant of how hard it is to stretch a buck in 2018. And, well, for that reason, if you're like me, you become that much more indignant when you find out what Uncle Scam is doing with our money. It's the weirdest thing. It remains... Look, you can take a bunch of lab rats and you can poke at them and you can prod at them and you can put them in lousy conditions, and immediately a lab rat, after the first jab with whatever the hell it is, the poor rat's being jabbed with, he's going to get in the back of the cage and he'll be like, you come anywhere near me, I'm going to F you up, because what you just tried to do was effed. We as people, we seem to be a little bit more conditioned to take it. And this is a perfect example of that. We just get used to this weird situation where we the people, oh, look, that's why that term exists. We, the people, are the folks that pay politicians' salaries. They depend on us. They depend on our hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears, and they take a hunk of that every single month out of every single paycheck. And then it's the most bizarre relationship I can think of, because it's the only time where the person who cuts the check, it's the only time I can think of where the person who cuts the check has to wait to get an audience with the person who gets paid by that check. Like, if my boss calls me into their office, I better go quick, smart, because they're the person cutting the check. I'm beholden to them. They are my livelihood. I've got to go and do whatever the hell it is they tell me to do ultimately. That's how it works in the real world. Now, if you're a politician, it's a very interesting thing, because you don't have to worry about having the boss call you into their office, because the boss, the person cutting the check, is you and me, the American people. We, the people, cut the check. Yet, for some reason, we can't get them on the phone. We can't reach them. We can't really do anything about it other than threaten not to vote for them next time out. They don't have to pay us a lick of attention if they don't want to. It's the weirdest thing, and somehow, for some reason, we accept it. It's very strange to me, and I'll never be able to wrap my head around fully why. But not only are they not necessarily people we can get on the phone or sit down with, or when we've got a problem, we, the people that cut the check, can't go, what the hell are you doing? Explain yourself. We can't do that without some serious maneuvering and maybe getting the press involved or accosting them publicly. We can't call them into our office and demand to know what's going on. And yet we kind of sort of take it. And if you're like me, your blood curdles every single time you think of this. And your blood really curdles when you think of how taxpayer dollars are being wasted. And this, I suppose, is, well, I mean, look, there's any number of ways in which Uncle Scam wastes our hard-earned dollars. And this is one of them. This is a waste of time and taxpayer dollars. The FDA is moving to crack down on something. And you know what that is? That is use of the term milk. It's true. You catch this? For years, dairy groups have been lobbying lawmakers to restrict the use of the term milk to products from lactating animals, meaning it's got to have nipples. And it now appears that the FDA is set to cave to those demands. They don't want products like almond and soy milk to be called milk. Yeah. The FDA is soon going to issue guidance documents. And by the way, all this takes tremendous amounts of time. It's not like our government moves quickly or efficiently when these things happen. No, this is just something to occupy time. Oh man, I can spend well, at least until lunch break, just thinking about what this document is going to say. And then I'll just sort of twiddle my thumbs. And, well, it's not like the person that cuts the check is going to be able to call me into their office. So I'll just kind of do this in my own time. Yeah, these processes move as slow as molasses. So now the FDA will issue a guidance document. And by the way, this is a perfect example of time being frittered away. In what other form of business and what other form of work have you ever heard of something like a guidance document? We're going to issue a guidance document. It's the beginnings of a process that may maybe start to take effect. Oh my gosh, such a freaking waste of all of our time and all of our money. But yeah, the agency, the FDA, will soon issue a guidance document outlining changes to its so-called Standards of Identity Policies for Marketing Milk. FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb said, an almond doesn't lactate. By the way, I've been making jokes about almonds having nipples for a very, very long time. So the FDA is way behind me on that one. He said, an almond doesn't lactate, I will confess. Yeah, no kidding. No freaking kidding. No S, Sherlock. Anyways, as the folks over at Politico point out, the move would be a major boon for dairy groups, which have been struggling amid dropping prices and global oversupply. Well, look, I in no way, shape, or form want to cut dairy farmers off at the knees. Anything I can do that helps dairy farmers or any kind of farmer, these folks that are essentially the backbone of America, I'm all in favor of. You know where that expression, lose the farm, comes from, or bought the farm? That comes from the fact that you have a frosty spring and you lose everything. We need farmers. We rely and depend upon farmers. Without them, we are nothing. Yet the existence of a farmer is an incredibly tenuous and risky one. So anything I can do to help farmers, great. But like I said, they're struggling because, well, dairy prices are dropping. There's global oversupply. People are drinking less milk. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up drinking like a glass of milk every day with every meal. When I was in the lunchroom, there would be people that be like, okay, here's your food. Here's your milk. No, I'm good. I don't want it. I've got it. Nope, here's your milk. You must drink your milk. Milk is good for you. Blah, 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 blah. And you know what? As it turns out, I was being force-fed milk by the lunch lady for a very long time. My mom was dutifully giving me glasses of milk with pretty much every meal because we were brought up to believe it was good for you. And you know what? Milk might be good for a lot of people. It wasn't for me. Turns out, lactose intolerant. Shooting pains in my stomach and cramps that sent me to the hospital for many years had to do with eating entirely too much dairy. And I think a lot of people are, realizing dairy might not be the greatest thing for them. I'm not knocking dairy. I'm not knocking the dairy industry. But there's a reason why there's global oversupply of milk. If you look at someone like me that used to drink probably 3 glasses of milk a day and now drinks no glasses of milk a year, well, that's less milk being consumed. And I know I'm not alone on this one. I talked to my adult friends. When was the last time you had a glass of milk? Oh, man, I got no idea. Chocolate milk? No, like actual milk. Oh, man, when I was a kid. Did your parents used to drink milk when you were a kid? Yeah, they always had a glass of milk. It was weird, yeah. But now, not so much. So they're thinking that not being allowed to call almond and soy milk will change things. And I would love it if a move like this was something that would make the life of the American farmer, the American dairy farmer, easier. But sadly, it's not. Anyways, the industry has petitioned the FDA to enforce marketing standards for milk, but the agency has not previously addressed the issue. Last year, Wisconsin Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin sponsored a similar proposal called the Dairy Pride Act. The bill stated that given the proliferation of plant-based products in the marketplace that are mislabeled as milk, despite the standard of identity defined for this substance, enforcement by the Food and Drug Administration against these practices should be improved to avoid misleading consumers. And that's all well and good. You can't mislead consumers. But no one on the face of the freaking planet buys a carton of almond milk and says, oh, what was I doing? I thought this was milk. No one buys a carton of soy milk and goes, this is milk, right? I mean, it says milk on it. Anybody that seeks out almond or soy milk is conscientiously avoiding dairy. Like me. Hey, I don't like a glass of milk, but you know what I love? I love me some breakfast cereal. Oh, man. Bowl of Cheerios, bowl of Captain Crunch, bowl of Apple Jacks. Oh, bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So ridiculously good. And I can't really enjoy that without something milky in it, can I? So I, for the most part, use almond or soy milk when I have that sort of stuff, because otherwise it just kind of tears my stomach up. Occasionally, I'll have some milk. Like I keep milk in the house for coffee, like just a splash. But generally, I drink coffee black, and well, so I don't consume that much of it. But the bottom line is, if you're seeking out a product like almond or soy milk, you're doing it because of the lack of dairy in it. You know what the hell you're getting into. No one is under the notion that almond or soy milk are milk. And so this idea that this is tearing apart the dairy industry is just... I would love it, like I said, if I could make things easier for farmers in America. If there was a magic wand I could wave that would make the life of the average dairy farmer an easier, less risky, more profitable thing, I would do that immediately post haste. But bottom line is, drinking less milk, the oversupply of milk, the fiscal squeeze on the people that provide the milk comes from the fact that, well, we as a people are just drinking less of this stuff than we did when we were kids. And so the idea that our hard-earned dollars as taxpayers are being used, the time that we pay our public servants for is being used so that the FDA can write things like guidance documents outlining changes to the so-called standards of the identity policies for marketing milk. It's just such a fantastic waste of your dollars and my dollars. You want to do something meaningful for dairy farmers of America? Take the money that you were going to spend on all the pointless government boondoggle and the thousands of politician man-hours that were going to be involved in this. Take the money that would have cost and give dairy farmers of America an equivalent tax break. There you go. No muss, no fuss, giving back to people that want and need to survive in society, and we want and need them. We've got to make it an equitable thing for them to exist, but this is not the way to do it. This is, like I said, a massive waste of time and taxpayer dollars. And seeing as we're talking about dairy-related products and milk here, well then, if this doesn't make your blood curdle, then it really, really should. All right. That was probably a little bit more than I planned to spend on yogurt, cheese, milk, and things of that nature. But as I promised, we will get into this idea of the trade war that we may or may not be entering into with Canada. They were our friends for the longest time. Purveyors of delicious maple syrup, excellent hockey players, substandard bands like Nickelback that really did no harm to anyone. And, Moose. So why do we all of a sudden, according to Donald Trump, have a huge problem with him? We'll get into it next.
You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me.
So I got an email from Jeff in Orlando, Florida, who listens on Real Radio 104.1. You can do that too. At ADSXE is where you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, or if you want to go old school and email me the way Jeff did, ad@iheartradio.com. That's where you can find me. So Jeff wanted to know, and we've mentioned this in passing a couple times on the show, and I wanted a chance to get into it. Mention this in passing, that we are sort of at the beginnings of a trade war with our friends in the great white frozen tundra that is Canada. Now, the idea of any kind of war, trade or not, with our friends up north seems just ridiculous. War with Canada of any kind seems just freaking bananas. And the way it's come about kind of sort of is freaking bananas in a lot of ways. And I suppose the latest major milestone in the retaliatory tariff situation that we've got going on with Canada has to do with the fact that we as America, we went and told mom on Canada. We filed a complaint against Canada with the World Trade Organization. Now, I'm going to do my best to explain this to you like you're 6 by the request of Jeff, and that shouldn't be too difficult for me because my understanding of a lot of these concepts is that of a 6-year-old. But this is basically what happened. Donald Trump said, "Hey, you folks in Canada, you've had an easy ride. There's been an unfair system in place with regard to trade with America, and that ends now. There's going to be tariffs on things like steel coming into America from Canada and Mexico. They're our second biggest trade partner, by the way. We do a lot of business, or have done a lot of business with Canadians in the past." And so we're getting into it with them as per Trump. The White House slapped Canada and others with tariffs on steel and aluminum and things of that nature. And, well, the Canadians went, "Oh, heavens to Gretzky. Oh, for geez. Oh, man. Oh, are you serious? Oh, tough times, eh? Okay, well, being the polite Canadians that we are, we're just going to match your tariffs cent for cent." And they went ahead and did that. So now there's tariffs on goods and services and things of that nature going into Canada. By the way, foreign affairs ministers in Canada have called the American metal tariffs absurd and illegal because this is the weird thing. And this is like this. The injury was the fiscal one, the tariffs that we've applied to Canadian goods coming into the country. But insult was added to injury because these tariffs that have been applied to Canada they were applied on the premise that Canada represents a national security threat to the U.S. That was sort of the loophole that was exploited. $16.6 billion worth of tariffs applied to Canada because we've said that they're a national security threat to us. Does it seem like they're a national security threat to us? They're going to kill us with an overabundance of maple syrup? Anyways, this is why Canadians are so bent out of shape. Like, it's one thing to say, hey, there's a fiscal imbalance here with regard to our relationship when we're buying and selling stuff from each other. It's another thing to say you're a national security threat to us. And it's another thing to say you Canadians are a national security threat to us when we're making nice with the Putins and Kim Jongs of this world. So Canada has, well, in their unbelievably polite Canadian way, have taken offense to that. And when the Canadians went, okay, if you're going to say that we are a threat to your security and you're going to hurt us financially, well, we're just going to match it dollar for dollar on these tariffs. And right now, in this situation, we kind of look like the people that can dish it out but can't take it, because after Canada applied their tariffs, and there were tariffs applied to other European Union countries and China, Mexico, and Turkey, after they all applied counter tariffs to ours, what did we do? Did we go, all right, let's negotiate? No, we went and basically told mom on them. The U.S. filed separate disputes at the World Trade Organization against Canada, as well as the European Union and China and Mexico and Turkey. And here's the weird thing. They're angry. Canadians are angry. They say the actions taken by the president are wholly illegitimate and unjustifiable. Instead of working with us to address a common problem, some of the trading partners have elected to respond with a retaliatory I can never get that word right, and it always sounds like some weird pasta dish. Retaliatory sauce. Instead of working with us to address common problems, some of our trading partners have elected to respond with retaliatory tariffs designed to punish American workers, farmers, and companies. That's the line that we've taken. So like I said, we look like we can dish it out, but we can't take it. Am I making sense? We hit them with a bunch of tariffs. They hit us back with tariffs, and we went, hey, what are you doing? They're like, same thing you did. I'm going to tell the World Trade Organization on you. Kind of a bitch move in the eyes of the rest of the world. So there you go. We've decided to let the international trade disputes be resolved by the World Trade Organization. Now, what's weird is it's the World Trade Organization. This falls squarely into the sort of like globalist thing that we're supposed to be removing ourselves from as part of the whole America First thing. And by the way, I am all in favor of, let's forget Donald Trump said it. If you have a built-in prejudice against Donald Trump, I want you to remove him from the equation. But the idea of putting American goods and services first and trying to buy American and sell American is something that I absolutely believe in. I believe in trying to buy food and goods and things of that nature from local folks, as opposed to going outside of my neighborhood. If I can spend money in my neighborhood, I'm all for it. And that's kind of sort of what the idea of America First is to me, regardless of who says it. But this whole running and telling the World Trade Organization on the rest of the world is part of this sort of globalist thing that we're supposed to be pulling back of as part of making America great again. Does that make sense? We'll wrap it up next.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is.
The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So there you go. I've been asked by Jeff in Orlando, who listens on Real Radio 104.1, the very first station ever to take this show on. It's weird. I'm on the radio in places like Houston and San Diego and, well, all over the country. But none of my home markets, none of the places where I do my rock radio show that takes up the bulk of my day, none of those towns were the first adopters of this talk show. Talk radio programmers looked at me like I had two heads when they found out that I was doing something like this. They're like, what does a guy like you that plays Metallica records have to say about the world? I'm like, stuff. Some of the same stuff that some of your folks, and they just couldn't get it. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. And now the tide is starting to turn, and we're starting to build something, and that's really cool. But I'll never forget the very first radio station to ever put this show on was Real Radio 104.1 in Orlando, Florida. It existed on this digital iHeartRadio station for a long time, and we got listeners there. It was really cool. But I was basically summoned by the Grand Dragons of Talk Radio at the premier radio networks to create a show. They're like, we need a future. A lot of the old guys are getting a little older, and, well, we got to look down the road, and we need a new poster child for the world of talk radio, and we think you might be it. So just sort of exist in the digital world until it's time for you to get up to bat. And like I said, for muckety mucks in talk radio, the idea of me, the guy that's on like all these alternative and rock stations across the country, the idea, like what? A history of tremendous rating success, being, generally speaking, a winner in every single market that you're in? Pshaw, why would we want some of that on our talk radio stations? No. We're allergic to those ratings that you bring in. Why would we want a fresh voice like you? It was basically what I was met with by every single talk radio programmer that ever heard that I had a show. And I don't blame them. Change is different. Change is scary. Change is something that people aren't comfortable with. A lot of people want to keep doing the same thing over and over again because it's what they've done in the past and that's all they know. And I would never begrudge that to people. I definitely represent a risk. So I get that. But the folks over at Real Radio 104.1 in Orlando, Florida, they were the first people to take that risk. So there you go. And, they're also the first radio station to reap the ratings rewards. I'm only half joking. The people of Orlando have listened and listened well, and I really appreciate that. And you helped put us on the map. But anyways, I got this email from Jeff in Orlando, Florida, and Jeff in Orlando, Florida has asked me to explain the U.S. trade war, or the U.S.-Canadian trade war, in a sort of dumbed down way. And my understanding of it is pretty dumbed down, so I'm the perfect person to ask for that. The deal basically is this. Donald Trump said we've had a really unfair fiscal relationship with regard to buying and selling stuff from Canada. So we're going to slap them with tariffs on steel. And Canada went, what the hell are you doing? How on earth are you justifying this? And well, we said we're justifying this because you seem like a threat to our national security. And Canada went, okay, first you hit us in the wallet, and heavens to Gretzky, we didn't like that. But then you call us a threat to your national security? That's really insulting and not cool. Well, geez, there's nothing for it, but hey, we got to match you dollar for dollar on these tariffs. And so they did. They matched us dollar for dollar on $16.6 billion worth of tariffs that we slapped them with. And then, well, our president was hanging out with Putin and hanging out with Kim Jong and doing his very best to smooth things over with people that had threatened to blow us to hell in the past. The Canadians are going, okay, well, if he can make it work with Kim Jong and if he can make it work with Putin, the phone's going to ring any second now. And our friends in America are just going to like make this tariff thing go away, or we'll come to some sort of reasonable and equitable situation with them. I mean, like if they can hang out and have, these productive conversations with people that hated America and want to destroy it, then, we're here in Canada and we'll be just fine. And, oh, is that the phone ringing? Oh, is that Trump? Are we going to work things out? Is that he did what? He called the World Trade Organization on us? Oh, that son of a... Okay. So now we're in it. We're in a fiscal aggressive trade situation. I don't know if you want to go ahead and call it a trade war yet, but we are in a very aggressive situation with our friends in the Great White Frozen North, Canada. And Canada's sort of looking at us going, it's absurd to view any trade with Canada as a threat to the national security of the U.S. The tariffs imposed by the United States on Canadian steel and aluminum are unacceptable and illegal. That's what they're saying to us. And these cross-border tensions, if you don't remember anything like this happening in your lifetime, that's because they haven't. This is new. This is big challenges. This is a big challenge for the Canada-U.S. trading relationship. And this is someone that we've done a lot of business with over the years. This is stuff like the stalled renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement. This is President Trump's threats that he will impose new tariffs, this time in the automotive sector. Now, that's the one that people are really, really scared about. We do a lot of car business with Canada. That is a massive part of their economy and our economy. And this is people's jobs that are at risk. This is people's livelihoods that are being threatened in a very real and tangible and palpable way. So people are holding their breath, hoping that these levies on the really highly integrated Canadian-U.S. auto sector won't be, that people are hoping that they won't happen because they could be way more damaging for the economy than the duties on steel and aluminum that are at play now. And right now, we're in a very, very tenuous moment with Canada. Right now, we are at the beginnings of what could be a trade war. Like I said, a very aggressive fiscal situation. Now, I don't know if when you have a trade war, you declare a trade war. It's a little bit more of an insidious thing. Different rules of engagement. You don't necessarily declare war, I don't think. You're just at war. So it's hard to pick a moment when we would be going to war with Canada. But if Trump puts these levies on this unbelievably integrated Canada-U.S. auto sector, that I think would be the tipping point where we go from being in a really aggressive standoff to we're in an all-out trade war with Canada. Yeah. David McNaughton, do you know who that is? No, chances are you don't, and why would you? But David McNaughton is a guy who's having to work way harder than he ever thought he would. He's Canada's ambassador to the U.S. Like I said, there's a guy who's having to work way harder than he thought he would in the past. Let's be real here. Maintaining a relationship between the U.S. and Canada in years gone by has probably never been one of the more demanding gigs you could land as a Canadian public servant. You know, that guy thought he was on Easy Street. David McNaughton, Canada's ambassador to the U.S. What am I doing? Oh, having Gretzky. I'm going to take the kids to some water parks, maybe hit up Disney, and then try and sort out my sock drawer and update my stamp collection because there's really nothing to do around here. And wait, what? He said, what now? He said, what about what? Steel? Aluminum? Oh, honey, cancel the vacation. Pack me some syrup and gas up the moose. I'm off to work. I'm going to have to roll up my sleeves and work much harder than any Canadian ambassador to the U.S. has ever had to work before. It's historic. We are living in funny times. Like I said, I've said it a million times in the past, a lot in the last year or so. But we are living in a time period in history where your kids and their kids are going to be writing term papers on this year because there's so much happening. So much, what the hell? There are historical precedents being started left, right, and center. And, well, one of them is the relationship with Canada and entering into a trade war with them. If, in fact, we do. Like I said, we're in an aggressive situation now. If the auto thing happens, then I think we're in an all-out trade war with Canada. The weird thing is that this is in stark contrast, like I said, to our long-term relationship with the Canadians. We're going to slap you with tariffs. Oh, well, us being the free and easy Canadians that we are, polite to a fault. Oh, we're just going to do the right thing. We're going to match it dollar for dollar. Oh, okay. He went and talked to Kim Jong after calling him Little Rocket Man and then smoothed it over with the Russians who allegedly have pictures of him with prostitutes. He's making nice with them. Any second now, well, the phone's going to ring and we're going to sort this out and we'll all be friends again. And like I said, right now the Canadians are going, he did what? He cried to the World Trade Organization after our relationship has been what it's been in the past. He went and told the world's fiscal mom on us. So it's basically what we'd call here in the States a punk ass bitch move. And if you're a Canada, well, they just got punked. Why would he seek to make an enemy out of Canada? Well, politicians, Trump in particular, get great mileage out of telling you that you need to be scared of something or that someone that you felt fine with for a while is a problem. I didn't know they were a problem. Oh boy, are they ever. Whew, don't talk to them, don't look at them, don't engage them directly, but thank God you've got me to help you deal with the threat of Canada. Yeah. This is what politicians do. They tell you that you need to be scared of something that you weren't scared of before, and then they tell you that they're going to look after the problem that you didn't know you had, and then they bilk you out of votes and campaign contributions by saying that they'll save you. So there you go. And I think in many ways, this is all leading up to the next election. Donald Trump is a guy that works in the world of business. And you know what they have in the world of business? They have consultants. And do you know what consultants do? A lot of the times they come in, they take a fresh look at a situation. They go, all right, you got this problem, this problem, this problem. That's why your business is faltering. But what about when all the businesses that you usually work with are doing great? They don't have any problems. Well, then you still got a mortgage to pay. You still got to eat. You still got to pay rent. So you go back to those companies that thought they were doing fine and go, guess what? Not fine. Fortunately, this problem that you didn't know that you had, I'm here to solve it. So they've got to get us appropriately scared of the problem before we're willing to go, oh, whatever you got to do whatever it takes. And I think this is why it really comes, this is in many ways to do with Trump's 2020 re-election campaign. Because when it comes time to ask you for campaign finance and ask you for votes, he's going to want to look back at a laundry list of accomplishments and say, I solved this, 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 and this. And this is an easy way of saying, you know, that huge problem we had with Canada, which, by the way, Canadians want to make nice. This will go away immediately, if not sooner, when Donald Trump decides to make nice with them. Donald Trump can say, remember that huge problem we had with Canada? You didn't even know it was a problem, but I rescued you from the filthy Canadian clutches of Trudeau. Boy, they were coming for you and your families, your way of life, the food in your fridge and the shirt on your back, and I save you from our lifelong enemy that is Canada. Yeah, like I said, when it comes time for re-election, Trump's going to say, remember how it helped us dodge that huge fiscal Canadian bullet that you had no idea existed? You're welcome. And there you go. The Canadian trade war explained to you like you were 6 by someone who understands it like a 6-year-old. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again.